Welcome to Block 22 of the Celebrating the States Block of the Month. This is our version of the Michigan block. For this block, you will need 3 fabrics, a light, a medium, and a dark. And stay to the end of the video to see all of my test versions of this block in different colorways. From the background fabric, cut 2 squares that are 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. You will bisect both squares, corner to corner, twice, to get 8 triangles. You also need 4 squares that are 4 inches by 4 inches. The last piece to cut from the background is 1 square that measures 4 5/8 by 4 5/8. From the medium fabric, cut 4 rectangles that measure 2 5/8 inches by 4 5/8 inches. You also need to cut 4 squares that measure 3 inches by 3 inches. You will bisect each of the squares once, corner to corner, to get 8 triangles. From the dark fabric, you need to cut 12 squares that are 2 5/8 inches by 2 5/8 inches. Unless directed otherwise, please use 1/4 inch seam allowances when piecing the block together. We're going to start with all of the light triangles and 4 of the dark squares. Match up the corners and then piece the triangle to the square. The tips of the triangle will hang off the 2 sides of the square. Once these are cut apart, you're going to press towards the light triangle. If you're enjoying our Celebrating the States videos, we encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate it. Piece the remaining light triangles to adjacent sides of the square. Once pressed, this unit will be a large triangle-shaped unit. We're going to press towards the light triangle and then set these units aside. We will trim off the points at the very end. These large triangle units will form the sides of our block. Next, we're going to make the 4 corners of the block. We're going to use the light 4-inch squares and all of the medium triangles. With right sides together, line up the triangle to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the left side, and the point will meet the corner on the right side. Press these towards the medium fabric. For the next part, we're going to piece the remaining triangles to the adjacent side of the square. The medium triangle that's already sewn on should be on the right side. Match the triangle point to the corner on the left side, and you should have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the right side where the triangles meet. Press towards the medium fabric. Next, we need the 4 medium rectangles and 4 of the dark squares. Place the dark squares right sides together on one end of the medium rectangle. You want to sew corner to corner from the center to the outer corner. You can either draw a line with a pencil and then follow the line as you draw, or you can use your diagonal seam tape and use that center line to have the point of the rectangle follow as you're sewing the seam. At this point, you can trim the seam to a 1/4 inch seam allowance and throw away the small triangles, or you can sew another seam 1/2 inch away from the first and cut in between the two lines to get a spare half square triangle block to use in another project. Press towards the darker fabric, and while you're there, press those extra half square triangle units too. Now we're going to use the remaining dark squares to finish a flying geese unit on the other end of the rectangles. It's the same technique, just on the other side. Make sure you're going from the outer corner to the center. There was a lot of trial and error when I was testing this block. I had to test it several times before I got just the right measurements to have it turn out to be a 12.5 inch block. The first couple that I tried were too small, then there was one that was way too big, and then I finally got one that was just right. Press towards the darker fabric. Next, we're going to combine the corner pieces with the flying geese units. Start by trimming the points that hang off the top of the corner pieces. With right sides together, center the flying geese unit onto the corner unit. You should see a little bit on each side. It should be about an equal amount. When I sew these two units together, I'm going to sew it with the corner piece on top so I can try to get that point right on the 1/4 inch seam allowance. When all 4 are sewn together, you're going to set 2 of them aside, and the other 2 are going to get sewn onto the opposite sides of the center light square that's 4 5/8 by 4 5/8. For the 2 corner units, you're going to press towards the flying geese unit, and for the center unit, you're going to press towards the flying geese units and the center square. When pressing the center unit, I found it easier to start from the back side and press that way first, and then I flipped it over to the front just to give it a final pressing. Before we can put these pieces together to make our block, we need to trim the center section and these 2 corner pieces. Each of these sections will be trimmed to be 4 5/8 inches wide. I used my 6.5 inch ruler to trim the corner pieces, And I'm using my 6.5 inch by 24.5 inch ruler to trim the center section. Again, you're trimming these to 4 5/8 inches wide. Now we're going to bring back those triangle units and sew them to opposite sides of the corner sections. If you pressed as shown, those seams where the dark fabrics meet will nest together to make it nice and easy. Once you have the triangles sewn onto both sides of the corner pieces, press away from the corner sections and towards the triangle sections. Now we have just 2 seams left and our Michigan block is done, number 22. Before I sew these last 2 seams, I am going to pin them so that I know that all the places where the seams meet and that they nest, they won't shift as I'm sewing them. So I will take the time to pin at this point. I'll pin both of the sections at the same time, so I only have to pin once. Now all that's left to do is to press and then trim. For this block, first I pressed from the right side and then I flipped it over to the back side and pressed again just to make sure it was going to lay flat. If it needs some convincing, use a little bit of Mary Ellen's Best Press spray to get the best result. The last step is going to be to trim the block to 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches. I have a square ruler, so I'm going to use that. It works great. It has a halfway point marked in both directions, so the 6.25 inch line is marked in white. So I just use that to follow my center lines, and I line it up with those points so I know that I've got an equal amount on all 4 sides. And then trim all 4 sides. There was no reason to trim off those little triangles before until now, and you have a perfect block. Every month as I'm making these blocks, sometimes there's a little bit of trial and error to get to the point where the block is the right size. This one was a little bit trickier than some of the others I've done, but it was fun to kind of play around with different fabrics and see how it looked in different color combinations too. I also tried out using multiple different fabrics for the light and the dark and the medium, so it has a totally different look when you play around with the values. We hope that you'll take the time to hit the like button, leave us a comment, share with your quilting friends, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and happy quilting!